and he will make sure he'll try and help out if he can. Welcome to council meeting this morning. I'd like to welcome members of the public to the council meeting who are here. The meeting today will be, among other business, setting the revenue budget and council tax level for 23-24. And I would like to call for Sederin and apologies. Julie, please.
Thanks, Provost, and good morning, members. Provost Jim Todd.
Yeah.
Councillor Stephen Canning.
Here.
Councillor Ellen Friel.
I'm here, Julie, thank you.
Councillor John McFadden.
Here.
Councillor John McGee.
Yeah.
Councillor Elaine Cowan.
Here.
Councillor Maureen Mackay. Thank you. Councillor David Richardson.
Present, Julie.
Councillor James Adams. Councillor Lillian Jones.
Present.
Councillor Ian Linton. Councillor Douglas Reid.
Here.
Councillor Graham Barton.
Yeah.
Councillor Graham Boyd.
Here, Julie.
Thank you. Councillor Barry Douglas.
Here.
Councillor Neil Ingram.
Here.
Councillor Peter Maben.
Yeah, present.
Thank you. Councillor Claire Maitland.
Here.
Councillor Beverly Clark.
Here.
Councillor Sally Cogley.
Here.
Councillor Kevin McGregor.
Here, thanks.
Councillor Linda Holland.
Here, thanks.
Deputy Provost Claire Leach.
Here, Julie Fields.
Thank you. Councillor William Lennox.
Yeah.
Councillor Alison Simmons.
Here.
Thank you. Councillor Billy Crawford.
Present.
Councillor June Kyle.
Present.
Councillor Jim McMahon.
Here, Julie, thanks.
Councillor Neil Watts.
Present, Julie.
Thank you. Councillor Drew Filson.
Here.
Councillor Jennifer Hogg.
I'm here, thank you.
And Councillor Elaine Stewart.
Here, thanks, Julie.
Thank you.
Thanks, Julie. Members, just quickly go through a couple of things before we get into the business. December was always a busy time of year. Enjoyed visiting some of the schools, see the nativity plays, pantomimes, concerts, and the parties. So well done to all our children who are taking a larger part in organising the events in the schools. So good for them. January and February and into March, I'm going to be attending different burn suppers and also Chinese New Year. The entertainment was excellent. I need to go on a diet. Unfortunately, I need to pass on the result of the Celtic Kilmarnock game at Hampden Park in Glasgow. VAR is rubbish, where the result wasn't so favourable for Kilmarnock, but it was a great turnout, so well done to all the supporters. 23rd of January, it was an absolute pleasure to attend Recreation Park with other councillors in Darvel, where we watched Darvel beat Aberdeen 1-0, and that ranks as the largest upset in the history of Scottish football, so well done to Darvel. Unfortunately, in the next round, on the 13th of February, Darvel lost to Falkirk, who had done their homework where Aberdeen hadn't, and they nullified the threats in the Darvel team. They did it very well. We, from the council, presented the club with a framed picture of an aerial view of the Darvel-Aberdeen game. They were delighted to receive that. I've attended various award ceremonies, Scottish assemblies in schools, really entertaining. We are so lucky for our young folk in this authority. And last of all, I'd like to thank everyone that got involved yesterday, today, for MND, cup of tea for MND. It's coffee and tea in the canteen, and our on-site services have donated all the cupcakes, and all the proceeds will go to the MND charity. So thanks for that, everyone. Please pop in when you've got a minute and buy a cake. I'd like to go on to item 1 on the agenda, and that's the declarations of interest. And over to David if he feels it necessary.
Well, Provost, we have circulated the usual advice we give prior to this meeting to all members per the email I think issued on Tuesday. And just to remind members, in terms of the current version of the code that came into effect in December 2021, there is no requirement to declare any interest in respect of appointments made by the council. So the likes of the IJB, joint boards, joint committees, and the Leisure Trust and the Galway, the East Ayrshire Leisure Trust and the Galway Leisure Trust. Some members will recall in the past we've had to record that, but we no longer need to record that simply by virtue of the appointment itself. So unless any member in their own particular personal circumstances has any other interest to declare in accordance either with that advice or generally, then I wouldn't be expecting any from what we know. But as always, Provost, it is the responsibility of members, and it's members who know the circumstances. So this would just be a last call for anything that's particular to any individual member, but we're not aware of any issues that we would be expecting a declaration for.
Yeah, happy with that, David. I think we're all agreed. We know the score by now. So there's no declarations. Thank you. Item 2, the previous minutes from Council, pages 3 to 13 of your papers, and I move as a correct record.
Second, Provost.
Thanks, Deputy Provost. Members, any questions? Just checking online, there's nothing there. Thanks, members. We're going into item 3, and this is the Cabinet Committee minutes, and we're going to move these on block. Leader.
Move the correct record, Provost.
I'll second that, Provost.
Thank you. Any questions to the minute? Nothing online either. Thank you. Now, item 4. This is setting the 23-24 revenue budget on page 79. And I would refer members to the Cabinet report on this matter issued to all members on the 16th of February. In respect of the revenue budget paper, I would ask Council to note that in accordance with standing orders, the mover of a motion or amendment should speak for no more than 10 minutes, with succeeding speakers entitled to speak for no more than 5 minutes. The original mover shall have the right to speak for no more than 5 minutes on reply. So I would ask members to consider remit and recommendations from Cabinet meeting held on the 22nd of February 2023. Leader.
Thanks very much, Provost. Provost, members, may I first of all thank Chief Executive Eddie Fraser, Chief Financial Officer and Head of Finance and ICT, Joe McLaughlin, and the respective teams for supporting my own SNP group, and indeed all elected members of the Council through this year's budget setting process, and for their continued excellent financial stewardship of East Ayrshire Council. Provost, it is my intention to move the recommendations agreed at yesterday's Cabinet meeting, including options for the remaining unallocated £750,000 noted in the report. But before I do, I have to say that this is one of the most difficult budget settlements this Council has ever faced, post-COVID, in the middle of a cost of living crisis, soaring inflation, with spiralling food and energy costs, understandably increasing wage demands, and added to the uncertainty, we mark the anniversary of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, the largest European conflict since the Second World War, and of course, nearer to home, are waking up to the damage inflicted on the UK economy by getting Brexit done. These are difficult times for local government and indeed our citizens. As elected members responsible for delivering a wide range of services, we often see at first hand issues of poverty, neglect, antisocial behaviour that impacted well-being and mental health. Working with our communities as the COVID crisis showed, local government is best placed to deliver much-needed services, working collaboratively to restore civic pride, well-being, make our communities safe, supporting our local economy and much-needed jobs and infrastructure, decent education for our children, and a decent quality of life for all. Colleagues, members, the negotiations with the Scottish Government this year have been tough, very tough, and through COSLA, councillors across the country have worked collectively to get the best settlement we can, but fall well short of the resources we need to tackle the current crisis. The Scottish Government can point to going beyond flat cash as they did, putting additional resources to local government as they did, but any additional money just now is consumed by increasing wage demands, which has been pressed by soaring inflation. We need to intervention at UK exchequer level to get inflation under control and take the pressure off wage demands. These problems are created at the heart of Westminster under the UK government's responsibility. As well as additional resources, I would again appeal to the Scottish Government to put less red tape and conditions on funding, asking our authority to maintain teacher numbers when the school roll is projected to fall just doesn't make sense, particularly as there's significant pressures elsewhere, including education. There are increasing demands, as we've spoke many times in this chamber, in terms of this growing special needs population. We want to see a steady intake of newly qualified teachers as subject most needed for the best outcomes for our children. We can maintain low pupil-teacher ratios, but please allow us to manage the process. Our budget shows that our education service is valued and protected, and that's something we're proud of. But please do not tie our hands and let us do the best to make the best policies for our communities. The Cabinet agreed yesterday that money to be set aside in relation to protecting teacher numbers, offsetting rising energy costs, and an ASN out of schools programme for summer 2023, which many have been pursuing, holding bereavement service costs at current levels, as well as a number of fees and charges which are not set nationally by partners at zero increase. It was also agreed to establish an early intervention fund to support prevention and one-off interventions that will support long-term savings across the board in our structures. Aside from that, a sum of 750,000 was left unallocated, which I'm about to propose to address some of the issues we are all being faced with across East Ayrshire. It is hoped that all local authorities across the 9 wards will benefit from all these proposals. First of all, my group's top priority is to establish an antisocial behaviour team. It's a cost of £323,000. Establish a 5-person team initially for a 4-year period. Evidence across our community suggests post-COVID that this is an increasing issue and requires immediate attention. 2, a civic pride initiative to support graffiti removal, deep cleans, chewing gum removal from our town centres, and litter and tidy up activities and initiatives right across all our communities in East Ayrshire. 3, a tenant support fund of 500,000. We tasked the head of housing and communities to bring forward proposals for a draft scheme to support tenants struggling with fuel costs and help sustain tenancies, including in particular new tenants. 4, mental health and wellbeing support. Initial cost of 270,000 to align with the priorities of the Young People's Cabinet, recognising the increased demand post-COVID by linking to routes for future investment, and which is another increasing anxiety for members right across our communities. 5, the example we heard at the Young Persons Awards of Page's Period Poverty Pouch, and as been suggested from the Young People's Cabinet, we wish to extend the scheme to every S1 pupil across East Ayrshire, which has demonstrated to remove any stigma from free supply of period products. We will work with Paige, whose success at Kilmarnock Academy, where she worked with other volunteers to take the stigma out of this initiative, really worked well. And we would like to work with Paige and the Young People's Cabinet to see this work right across East Ayrshire. Roads, as ever, pressure on our roads surfaces as yet another cold winter has across East Ayrshire, and we would like to allocate money from Repairs and Renewals Fund to support roads capital programmes right across our towns and villages. And 7, and this is perhaps only item that I'm actually suggesting about a geographic area. I haven't suggested spending a penny other than other advice that I've given previously, but I would like to spend a few pennies in Cumnock toilets, which I know local members have been concerned about withdrawing the funding for that, for 50,000, and I know that there's a concern of the communities to reverse that decision, and I would propose that we do that. Members, I know that we all want what's best for our communities right across this chamber, and we all want to satisfy the demands of our citizens. We are no different, but we feel the need to improve the quality of life for everyone and give it that little bit of extra help for those who are struggling to cope with everyday life just now. I move the recommendations, including the additions to the unallocated sum and drawdown for the repairs and renewals fund, and move a council tax increase of 5% for Bandy equivalent and 4% council house rents, which will be amongst the lowest increases across Scotland. This leaves uncommitted balances of 2.6%, which is relatively healthy in comparison with other local authorities, but I'm no doubt necessary as we wish to guide East Ayrshire Council and its residents through the difficult years ahead. I move.
Councillor McMahon.
I would second the leader on that, Provost, and thank you. And if we could take a few minutes just to pick up on some of the points the Provost had said. That first of all, my thanks as well to the Chief Executive and the Chief Financial Officer in guiding us through the process and the full procedure of setting this budget.
Hold on. Folks, online, there's people's mics are on. Could you make sure they're all off, please?
Thanks, Provost. I'll just carry on. The leader lays out this is probably one of the hardest budgets that this council has delivered. And I know there could be more difficult times to come ahead of us in the next 4 or 5 years in the process of setting budgets. But going back to this one, that is the 7 points that, or the 7 items that we bring forward have been well thought out. The leader makes a point round about that this is authority-wide. It's no specific other than the last item on the agenda there. The civic pride is vital to increase our expectations of what we think our constituents should have and the conditions they should be living in round about town centres and villages. Round about the item 2, and sorry, item 1, the antisocial behaviour. It's the team of 5, I think, is important. I'd like to see some additional terms and conditions laid out about the times that the officers would be working to meet the demands of the public on that, but we can come back to that later on. On number 3. Thanks, Leader. The Tenant Support Fund, again, is taking into consideration the hard times that our tenants are feeling just now, both through coming back off the back of COVID and the current cost of living crisis. Mental health support and wellbeing, again, vital for taking cognizance of what our young people are looking for. I think after the back and taking into consideration the antisocial behaviour that could be associated, although that's across all demographics, and let me make that perfectly point clear. It's not just into young people, but it's important that we look at mental health, but taking into consideration the young people's cabinet. The roads, I'll probably leave that maybe to the spokesperson later on, but the investment that we've been committed over the last 2 or 3 years has certainly played dividends, as we've seen the surface of the road. And again, I think the toilets and Cumnock, I think it's vital that we keep them as the second biggest town and one of the town's tourist attractors, and it's laid out to attract tourists there. I can maybe make a point on that at this particular time on the toilets, Leader, if you don't mind. I wouldn't just like to keep the toilets at this stage. I'd like to enhance them with a proposal that was at Cabinet and an additional APC in the town centre as well. I'll leave it at that just now, Provost, and thanks.
Thanks, Jim. Folks, we've had a proposal and a seconder. Are there any other proposals, amendments to the paper? Councillor Mackay.
Thank you very much. And again, my thanks to all officers, in particular Chief Exec and the finance officers. Their support has been immense at this particularly difficult time. Please, I really do need to speak quickly to get through everything. Members, not one person in this room stood last May to make cuts. Every person stood with the desire to do the very best for our communities. Instead, what we have faced is the most challenging financial settlement that I have experienced in my 20 years as an elected member. Scotland's cross-party grouping of local councils said this year an additional £1 billion was needed to fully address continued and existing budget pressures, according to their research. Members, that figure came from us. people closest to our communities best placed to know what's needed. Members, that has not been delivered, and please, no matter how many times and how many ways we see government spin the reality, we each know we are experiencing real-term cuts to local government to the extent that our very existence as we have known it is at risk. After 15 years, we've witnessed a Scottish government losing its grip, who clearly doesn't respect local government or acknowledge our mandate to take democratic decisions, who are prepared to work in meaningful partnership with local government of any political makeup. These facts should concern us all. We have strikes, we have services on their knees, and our communities are suffering. Members, enough is enough. It is against this background that we have to take decisions which we know will not be without consequences, but there is a job to do and it is ours to do. We will respond as our services and staff face pressure from significant increases in the rate of inflation, coupled with an increasing demand for our services and the emerging pressures from this cost of living crisis as we experience prolonged and severe financial constraint. Turning first to the recommendations in the paper from Cabinet setting 23-24 revenue budget, I accept recommendations 1 to 20 with the following exception. At Appendix 1 to remove Cut 31 and instead maintain the current public conveniences at Tanyard in Cumnock. This reduces the expenditure reduction measures to £2,000,770. Which can be met from GFUB across this year. I note that our education budget is ring-fenced, with our largest service delivering less than 0.5% of the reductions, whilst other services bear a greater share of the expenditure reduction targets. Also, that our ASN summer programme for this year is planned on an external basis and look forward to hearing more on these proposals. I welcome the creation of an innovation fund to be overseen by the Chief Executive to encourage and support service and corporate change, noting the similarities to a transformations fund that I proposed in my 2016 budget to the then Director of Health and Social Care to be established within the IJB, which just goes to show that good ideas are always good and are there to be developed. I now turn to my group's recommendations at point 7 and to our responses to the budget engagement outcomes summarised in the paper and available to members, which certainly makes interesting, challenging and informative reading. A sincere thank you to all of those who took part in that engagement. Unfortunately, due to the constraints in our settlement this year and what we anticipate going forward, the truth is we cannot do it all, but here is our response and proposals. 1, to encourage and evidence our civic pride. To do this, we need to develop a programme to enhance the appearance of our town and village centres through ongoing clean-ups. We quite simply need to invest in more people doing the basics to make our environment fresh and clean, covering all aspects of litter, trafficking, tackling graffiti, chewing gum, cleanliness and presentation of our street furniture, and make it possible for our community to join in through local-based opportunity for those not readily able to access our recycling centres. Failure to do this has resulted in a tired appearance that does not match our aspiration for East Ayrshire. I propose a 1-year pilot for this and make a budget allocation to the Head of Housing and Communities of £254,000 to deliver these proposals from GFUB. Linked to this is our proposal to undertake a full review of all aspects of the brown bin calendar charging and wider recycling policy, included continued use of the 3-storey trolley system in light of the planned introduction of DRS in August 23, and I allocate 20,000 from the same source for that. Concerns about roads and pavements continue to be raised. This year, we propose to allocate an additional 400,000 for repairs and renewals for pavement resurfacing, requesting that the Head of Service allocate this funding to streets within our older settled estates who have largely seen only limited resurfacing since their establishment. This reflects our desire to support our ageing population who wish to be more active and able to walk on more level and safer surfaces. 4, we wish to see a 1-year pilot established to take a different approach on how we are dealing with antisocial behaviour, with the aim of ensuring that we are bringing together all the skills and powers, including where appropriate enforcement, that we currently have to take a new focused approach to this area, which we know is such a blight to many within our communities and directly impacts their quality of life and feeling of safety. We are a trauma-informed council and we expect that to be reflected in this work. We have good partnership engagement with police, fire and rescue, which we wish to see focused to support this approach. At the end of this year, we expect to be better informed and able to evidence not only better approaches and results, but also be in a position to highlight to government the impacts of gaps in legislation and what's needed to sort it. An investment of 202,000 across both GFUB funding and HRA on a split of 40 to 60%. I now move to our response to the cost of living crisis, which we are all hit by, and I have 2 recommendations on additional measures which I consider will release some pressure on family budgets directly and indirectly redress impacts of the pandemic. Our schools have free meals in primary as far as primary 5. Primary 6 upwards to S6 only have access to free school meals if eligible. Currently, we are rightly encouraging uptake of this entitlement, but this still leaves many young people to purchase a meal in school or outside school. And we are currently actively marketing our food services with some very nifty marketing. And I wish to make 500,000 split to match academic year across 2 financial years from GFUB available for the school year to provide half-price school meals to those who currently have to pay, which is an ongoing direct saving to the family budget week by week. Our second measure aims to make our local play parks more attractive at a time when they have never been more needed by children and families who quite simply do not have the same level of resource for outings and activities. Scottish Government allocated direct funding as part of a play park investment programme, so I propose to accelerate spend of 400,000 allocation currently within repairs and renewals budget to 23/4, utilise Scottish Government funding of 224,000 and provide additional funding of 125,000 to deliver a play park funding in 23/24 of £750,000. And the following year in 24/25, again utilise Scottish Government funding of 336,000 and provide additional funding of 165,000 to deliver play park funding of another £500,000. Taken together, these measures enable us to deliver for our communities and to ensure that the impact on the General Fund uncommitted balances is limited. Together, these measures make changes to the GFBU by 0.1%, setting it at 2.5, which is higher than it was for most of last year and well within the strategy for reserves and balances described in Appendix 2. I move the presented recommendations. However, I still have 4 areas which I wish to highlight and hope that relevant officers and spokespersons will be able to explore in the coming year and consider and make future recommendations. One is care alarm debt, which was discussed at Cabinet, and I hope can be explored as agreed yesterday within IGB meetings in March of this year. That debt currently is at £58,640 from figures that have been provided to me. East Ayrshire tenants, content insurance, we currently only have 793 people in the scheme and 10,779 people not in the scheme. Last year, the numbers that we had in the scheme was 842. That's a trend. Broadband and social tariffs are really important, more so now than ever before, and perhaps we could consider upping our promotions approaches in relation to that. Additionally, I would very much like us to look at what our response is as a council in relation to applying restorative justice practices. and look to adopt this approach and link this with our proposals for antisocial behaviour. Thank you very much, Provost.
Councillor Douglas.
Thank you, Provost, and members. I would absolutely commend the Labour budget to the Council as a balanced budget that seems to act on many of the issues that the public have been telling us are their priorities. I agree with the Council leader that local government is a vital part of government, but I remain disappointed that the Scottish Government have continued to make further brutal cuts to East Ayrshire Council's budget. As my leader said earlier, none of us come into politics to make cuts, I'm sure, and yet again, here we are. The contempt the Scottish Government have for local government continues. It seems to me a travesty where 60% of our budget is dictated to by the Scottish Government because we're delivering their priorities, yet cuts continue. Hardly the actions of a Scottish Government who value councils as partners in the governance of this country. I think it's a travesty that we as a council cannot even make the decision to reduce vacant teaching posts should we wish to do so due to the financial punishment handed down by the Scottish Government, a ridiculous situation when our school age population is set to fall by 8%. Enough, absolutely is enough. Cuts to councils are cuts to communities, and whilst we, and I believe the administration, have reached a balanced budget today, I worry for the future, unless the Scottish Government comes to the table and treats this council and all other councils across Scotland fairly and as valued partners rather than being their lackeys. Members, I would absolutely commend the Labour budget to the council. Thank you.
Right, thanks, folks. We've had recommendations as proposed by Leader and an amendment proposed by the Leader of the Labour Group. Now, do you want some discussion on these points for clarification, or do you want some time for a recess?
Provost, there are a number of similarities there in our objectives and our proposals there. It might be an opportunity if we could have a recess to discuss if we can find some kind of commonality in both sets of proposals.
That's okay. Now, are there any further recommendations, proposals today? Councillor Watts.
Thank you, Provost. I'd just like to make a statement, please, if we can, from the Conservative group. May I take this opportunity to thank the council officers for the time and the effort that they have taken in producing these budget reports for us today. The Conservative group feel that the proposed rise in council tax of 5% is far too high, especially with all the current cost of living pressures on our residents here in East Ayrshire. However, it is important to understand that the need for such a rise falls directly on the SNP Scottish Government in Holyrood. They have yet again, in real terms, cut local government funding, despite themselves receiving a rise of 3.4% from the UK government this year, which is much higher than they were expecting. The SNP government in Holyrood have, over the last 10 years, seen a rise in its budget of 8.3%. Yet in real terms, local government funding has only increased by 4.3% in the same period. This can hardly be seen as fair funding for local councils across Scotland. Our own SNP administration here in East Ayrshire must recognise that today's proposed rise of 5% is completely down to its own government's failings and centralisation policies. They must also understand that any council tax increases that we agree today will be proportionately more painful for lower income households than wealthier ones. At a time when families across the spectrum in our area are struggling. We East Ayrshire Conservatives will always look to provide the best quality local services at the lowest possible cost. However, we are also caring and compassionate. And as such, we certainly do not agree with the proposals to close the Tanyard municipal toilets in Cumnock. And we are pleased that all groups agree with the proposal that this should be removed from the proposed cuts to services. And we pressured heavily for this to happen. Following detailed discussions with the Labour Group, we collaboratively agree with and will support their budget proposals today. And we hope that others across this chamber will do so also. Members, we must and need to provide the best services and support and the help for our communities here in East Ayrshire at a time when so many of our residents are facing financial difficulties. Thank you, Price.
Thank you. Well, it wasn't a proposal, so I'll open it up for any members' comments, clarification. Yeah, Leader.
I suggest we go to negotiations at this stage, because we'll obviously have to feed back into our groups as well.
Yeah, Eddie.
Thank you, Provost. Provost, through you and with agreement of members, you know, if members are so minded, I think we should call for recess, you know, at this time. The recess would give an opportunity for the different groups to consider what they've heard, because none of them have heard the previous, you know, like proposals from groups. And then if leaders so wish, then to consult on that after it, so that we come back then, you know, more informed, you know, of the different proposals that everyone has just heard at this time. I propose that we take our time to do that, so that everyone, when they come back to the chamber, is well informed in that. And I anticipate that could take us somewhere near to an hour overall to do that by the time we inform the groups and then consider and then come back. We will keep in touch, you know, with all members to make sure if we're ready before that we do come back before that. But if you and members are in agreement, you know, Provost, I would suggest that we plan for a recess of an hour at this time.
Right, members, an hour, will we say 11:30? Is that okay? Is that giving us enough time, do you think, to to and fro if it's needed? Is 11:30 okay? And if it's not needed, we'll come back earlier. But the officers will make sure everybody's back if needed. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Thank you.